5 lines from the bottom where it says V'Rabbanan. 5 lines from the bottom, 3 words in. It says Rabbanan. And in the articles Gemara, it's 8b2, and it's on the last little paragraph over there. Now, the Gemara is talking about one of the things that the Gemara said began at Tishrei, at Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. The Rosh Hashanah that begins at Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. One of the things that's enumerated is Yovel. Yovel begins at that point. Yovel, once again, is the culmination of the 7 cycles of Shemitah. So every 7th year is a sabbatical year. It's the Shemitah year. The ground is not worked. Everything it's laid. It becomes hefker. Everything is laid fallow. You don't work the ground. That happens every 7th year for 7 cycles of 7, just like in this, exactly like we have in counting the Omer, 7 weeks of 7. So similarly, there is 7 cycles of 7 years for Shemitah. Somebody knocking? Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's heaven's door, but so, and we had the locks fixed and everything. The lock fixed and everything. Well, just anybody. So it's seven cycles of 7, and the 7th year of each cycle is the Shemitah year. That happens for 7 cycles, and the 50th year, so meaning after 49, the 50th year of the cycle is the Yovel year, it's the Jubilee year. So that 50th year is similar to each Shemitah year. So it's a sabbatical year. We're on 8b2, the last paragraph on 8b2. So that 50th year is it's just like the sabbatical year. It's called the Jubilee year. And that year you can't work the land. However, the other halachos come into play, namely that all ancestral lands, whatever land belonged to your sheva, to your tribe, that goes back, even if it was sold, it goes back to the tribe, to the original owners, to the family. Actually goes back to the family, right? Correct. Goes back to the family. Yeah. And similarly, servants go free. Slaves are all set free on the 50th. So anybody who's in servitude at that point gets set free at the Yovel. So okay, one other halacha is that we blow the shofar on the Yovel, which something that we blow it on Yom Kippur of the Yovel. So now those 3 halachas, again, it's 4, I guess. That the ground is, we don't work the ground just like in Shemitah, just like the sabbatical year, we don't work the ground in the Jubilee year, so that 50th year we don't work the ground. We set the slaves free. We blow the shofar. Did I say another one? No, that was, those 3. Oh, and the ancestral lands. All 4 of those halachas take place during Yovel. 3 of them are unique from Shemitah. They're different from Shemitah, the 7th year, which Shemitah only, you just don't work the land, but it has nothing to do with the slaves, and it has nothing to do with ancestral land. It doesn't have to do with, we don't have to blow the shofar during Shemitah. 3 of them are unique to Yovel, but again, all four of those come into effect at Yovel. The Gemara earlier brought down that the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, if I keep saying his name at 6 a.m, Rabbi Shmuel beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. So if you Rabbi Shmuel's opinion was that the slaves begin to go free at Rosh Hashanah. That is the Rosh Hashanah that's mentioned in the Mishnah. They begin to go free at Rosh Hashanah, but they're not fully free, meaning they can no longer be worked, but they still get to live by their master's house until Yom Kippur. They just live as free men by their master's house, meaning they're not allowed to be worked. They're allowed to eat, they can drink, do whatever they want, so to speak. I mean, I don't know what they want, but they're not Spivak kids. They can't just do whatever they want. But they I was just telling yesterday, somebody it was one of my children, will remain nameless, used to have this incredible habit of waking up in the morning and walking over and bringing us the Jacoby's mail. Remember that? It was like, hey, here's the Jacoby's mail. Oh, great. Calling them up and be like, hey, you guys, you still got to pay that bill. It's overdue. So in any case, but either way, but they can do whatever they want. However, but they don't go free. On Yom Kippur, the shofar is blown, and all the slaves go free. Okay, so that is what Rosh Hashanah is according to what Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is according to Rabbi Shmuel. Now the Gemara, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom, third word in V'Rabbanan. I'm sorry, one more thing. He learned that Rabbi Shmuel learned that because the pasuk says Shnas HaChamishim. It says the 50th year. Now we know it's the 50th year from other indications of the pasuk. It says count 7 cycles of 7, and then the next year is going to be Yovel, and then it says, and it tells you what number that is. That's 50. So by higher mathematics, we were able to determine that by ourselves. So he says, because it says that's the 50th year, we learn that it begins at the very beginning of the year, the 50th year. It starts at Rosh Hashanah, even though all the halachas don't come fully into force until Yom Kippur, 10 days later. It starts at Rosh Hashanah. V'Rabbanan, shanim atamakadosh v'yatamakadosh chadashim. They learn from the word shanim over there. Again, I'd have to find the exact passage, but either way, they learn that shanim atamakadosh, that we are makadesh the 50th year. That Beis Din is makadesh the 50th year via tamakadesh chadashim, and they're not makadesh the chodesh. Meaning, it is not considered. There's a mitzvah that Beis Din has to be makadesh the year. This is very unique to us because this is not the way we're used to understanding the halacha and most of Shas. But they have to be makadesh the Jubilee year. They have to actually pronounce the year to be kodesh and say this is now the Yovel. It's kodesh. They have to do that for the year, but they do not have to do that for Rosh Chodesh, which is like exactly. You hear all over Shas here. Beis Din has to pronounce a Rosh Chodesh. That's it. But the opinion over here that's arguing with Rabbi Shmuel is Beis Din does not have to pronounce Rosh Chodesh. They don't have to say it's Kodesh in order for it to be considered Rosh Chodesh. But for the Jubilee year, they do. That's what they learn from this pasuk. Now, Tanya Idach. Another brayz. Here we go. Yovel Hi. The pasuk says. I gotta find the pasuk. The pasuk says. Where is that pasuk? Yeah. No, that's not where it is. 7. This thing. Yeah, here we go. It says the pasuk says v'kidashtem shnas al-chamishim shana ukrazim jor baretz l'chol yashvel yovelhi. It says you are makadesh. You make holy the 50th year, the Jubilee year. Ukrazim jor ba'aretz, and you declare freedom in the land l'chol yashvel to all its inhabitants. Yovelhi. It is Yovel. Yovelhi tielachem. Yeah, that it's Yovel. It's Yovel to you. And then it says v'shavtem ish al achuzaso v'ish al mishpachto tashuvu, that everyone should return to the land, that everyone should return to their families, the land should return back to their families. Yeah. So the pasuk says Yovel Hi. It says it is Yovel. What is it saying? Yovel Hi. Yovel Hi. Matam alomer. Why is it saying? Guess what? It's Yovel. We know it's Yovel. He said to make it Kodesh. We know it's Yovel. Matam alomer. Lefisha nemar b'kidashim eshnas achamishim yachol kashem shemiskadeshes v'alachas b'tchilav kach miskadeshes v'alachas t'sofa. It's saying that it is Yovel because you might think the following. This year is Yovel. The pasuk is saying this 365 days, that is Yovel. Why is it telling me that it's Yovel? Of course it's Yovel. You just told me to be Makadesh, to make it holy. It's saying these 365 days are Yovel, and not any of the days before it, and not any of the days after it. Now, what you need to know is the Gemara is about to discuss, which is actually an extremely important halacha, and it comes up all over halacha, is the following. There is a halacha, and we do hold this halacha, called Mosifin Chol al Kodesh, that there is a mitzvah, a separate mitzvah to add a chol onto Kodesh. That means that anytime we're going to have, and we're about to see the machlokas on it, anytime you have a day that is Kodesh, anytime that you have a day that is Kodesh, you have a mitzvah to bring chol into the Kodesh. So, meaning, if Shabbos begins at 6 o'clock, there is a mitzvah. Let's say it begins at 6 o'clock and it ends at 6 o'clock, which is not. It would probably begin at 6 and end at 7 because of Shkia and Seis. But let's say it begins at 6 and it ends at 7, so it's a 25 hour. You should begin it earlier. a few minutes earlier and end it a few minutes later. So, for example, let's say it's 5:50 and end it at 7:10. You have a halacha to begin it and to end it, to add to it either in the beginning or the end, and preferably in the beginning and the end. And the Gemara is going to talk about that halacha over here. So it says, and it's Shuba Shabbos, Shuba Yantav, it's going to bring it over here also. So it says, V'atisama, Sharei Mosifim Mechol HaKodesh, and the pasuk is telling you, you do not need to do that for Yovel. It starts on Rosh Hashanah and it ends by Rosh Hashanah. You don't need to add to Yovel on the beginning of the end. So, and you might think, why would I need to do that? Because we do, so the Gemara says, because we generally add chol onto a kodesh. So, but over here we would not. Talmud Lomar Yovel Hi Shnas HaChamishim Shana Shnas HaChamishim Shnas HaChamishim Atam HaKadosh V'Atam HaKadosh Shnas HaChamishim V'Achas. Because we learned that Yovel only lasts for 365 days. There is no halacha of adding on to the days before or the days after it into the Yovel. So the Gemara says, "V'Rabbana shnasa chamishim atamona v'atamona shnasa chamishim ve'achas." Now the Rabbanan disagree. They disagree with that limud, meaning that they actually are going to hold. They are going to hold that you are mosif onto Yovel, so that you do bring it a little bit early, you do bring it a little bit late, but the Gemara says, so what do they do with the fact that it's called the 50th year, that the Pesach says, this is year 50, seeming to the exclusion of what's before it and what's after? So the Gemara says, because this is also fascinating, the Gemara, the question becomes like this, and this is a machlokas not here, it's a machlokas not the Gemara. How do you count the years? We know you do seven, you do cycles of seven. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is Shemitah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is Shemitah. You do that to 7 cycles. The 50th year is going to be the Jubilee year. Now, the 50th year is a tack on, and then you reboot the cycle afterwards. So meaning the year after 50 becomes 1, or is it 50? Is it 50, and that 50 is also one of the new cycle? So is it cycles of 49? And then, cycles of 49 always, it just always goes cycles. And then it happens to be that the first year of every 8th cycle, the first year of the reboot is also a Shemitah kind of year, or is it cycles of 50? And it's an extremely is it vastly different than the way you would wind up counting through history of how everything worked out. But either way, so the Gemara says, they learned from saying it Yovel, that it's Yovel, it's Shnas Chamishim. I'm sorry, not that it's Yovel, that it says it's the 50th year, that it's the 50th year, but it's not also year 1. It's 50 and not 1, just 50. So that means the year after 50 is 1, as opposed to Lafukim or the Yehuda. We're on the second, the very ending, the second line on the 9a. It says, and this is coming to exclude the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda de Amar. Shnas Chamishim Ola Lakan Ulakan. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that the 50th year is both 50 and it's also one of the new cycle. Kamash Malan, that not that way. Now the Gemara says, okay, fine. So we had a machlokas. What we do with the words, it is Yovel. One opinion says we don't add on to the Yovel year. We don't add any. Yovel is 365 days, and we don't add anything before it. We don't add anything after it. The other opinion is that Yovel is year 50, and it's not also year 1 for the new cycle. Now the Gemara asks, well, okay, fine. How do we know that there is a halacha of adding chol onto kodesh? How do we know that when you have any day that's kodesh, any day, Shabbos, Yantav, anything that's considered kodesh, that you have a halacha to add on to it at the beginning of the end? The Tanya. The pasuk says, and this is the pasuk by Shabbos. It says, the pasuk here, someone on the side. It says 6 days you should work. The 7th day is Shabbos, and you should rest from your plow and your sickle. You shouldn't be harvesting. You shouldn't be planting. So Rabbi Akiva Omer ain't it tzarich lomer charshiv v'katzir shal shvius. Now Rabbi Akiva's opinion is that this verse is actually not referring to Shabbos, even though it sounds like it's referring to Shabbos. It's referring to Shvius. There's no need for it to be discussing Shabbos, Shabbos, all those halachas elsewhere. It's referring to Shvius, saying in Shvius, in Shemitah year, in the 7th year, do not plow the land. That's why it specifically is talking about agricultural halachas. It says, don't plow the land in the 7th. So, okay, it is very odd that pasuk it's actually smack in the middle of the halachas of Shabbos. It is odd. However, that is the way Rabbi Akiva learns, that this pasuk is discussing Shabbos. So, b'charish v'katzir tishbos, Rabbi Akiva omer, ein tzarech lomar charish v'katzir shel shvius. It doesn't have to tell me that the charish of the plowing and the planting, the plowing and the harvesting, I should say, of shvius. It doesn't have to tell me of shvius. Sharei kvar nemar sadcha lo sizra. I would already know that on shvius I can't do these things. Ela charish shel erev shvius hanichnas l'shvius. It's telling me that I shouldn't plow the land on erev shvius, right before shvius, going into shvius. The katzir shel shvius hayotzemi lemotzei shvius, and I shouldn't harvest on the time after shvius, when shvius has just left. So meaning the time going into the 7th year and the time going out of the 7th year, meaning in the 8th year. So the very, very tail end of the 6th year and the very, very beginning of the 8th year also should be pulled into shvius. And that's how Rabbi Akiva learns. This is another halacha, which is brought down by shvius, but it applies to all of the Torah, obviously, that you should bring time in to the Kodesh. So grab time from before, grab time from after, and bring it into Kodesh. That's how Rabbi Akiva learns it. Rabbi Shmuel says, "Ma charish rishus af kacher rishus." He does not use the verse for that. Rather, he learns something else from the fact that the Torah specifically articulated charish and katzir. It specifically articulated plowing and harvesting. Yatsa ktsir ha'omer shu mitzvah. It says that you can't do. Now Rabbi Yishmael is putting it back to Hilchos Shabbos, where the pasuk actually is actually written in the Hilchos Shabbos. Why is it talking specifically about those 2 malachas? That's 39 malachas. Why does the Torah say, "Oh, don't do those 2 malachas"? Very good. And what about the other 37? So it says because it wants to tell you something. Ma charish rishus af kacher rishus. It's telling you that just like charish, you don't always you never have a mitzvah to plow the field. So it's rishus. It's voluntary. It's voluntary to plow the field, and you shouldn't do it. So katzir, any voluntary harvest you shouldn't do. Yatsa katzir ktsir haomer shu mitzvah. That excludes the harvesting in the omer, which is a mitzvah. Now, what you need to know is that I mentioned this. There is a halacha, and I'm bringing another halacha to understand this. But there is a halacha that the first day of Sfiras HaOmer, the first day after Pesach, we not only start counting our count towards Shavuos, but it's also the time that the new grain becomes, we mentioned, the new grain becomes permitted. So any grain that grew from before Pesach, any grain that grew before Pesach is now permitted after Pesach, after that second day of Pesach, the first day of the Omer. Any grain that grew right before that is permitted, and any grain that's going to grow right after that is not going to be permitted until the next second day of Pesach, until 365 days later. So now, in order for that permission to take place, or the beginning of that permission, is they brought a korban omer. That korban omer could be harvested even on Yontif. It could be harvested right, or even on Shabbos. It can be harvested if it needs to be harvested, or he's going to actually say you should do it. Harvested in order to bring that korban omer. Meaning, draw the mathematical line over there. Rabbi Yishmael says when there's a mitzvah to harvest, even on Shabbos, you harvest. The only time you can't harvest is when it's voluntary. But if it's obligatory to do a mitzvah, then you can harvest. That's what he learns from that pasuk, and that is the place by that korban omer. Rabbi Yishmael most even so that's what he learns from that pasuk. Now we're going to take it back. Okay, so the Gemara learns one more time. Rabbi Akiva learns from the fact the Torah says it's the 50th year. He learns the 50th year, 365 days. Not Rabbi Akiva, that's the Rabbanan, right? Yes. They learn 365 days, and you don't. I got confused with which opinion's which now, but one opinion holds. I think it's 365 days, and you don't add on before or after it. Rabbi Shmuel says, I'm sorry, let's go back to the other part. Rabbi Akiva learned that you add from Chol on to Kodesh. You add from the weekday onto Shabbos or onto Yontif. You add it. He learns that from the verse that says that. He learns it from. Yeah, he learns. I'm sorry. He learns it from Charish and Katzir. He learns it from harvesting and plowing. That you have to add on that the time going in the plowing before Shemitah and the harvesting after Shemitah, you have to add on to it. So that he knows. Rabbi Shmuel is using that verse for something totally different. He's using that verse that you have to bring the Korban Omer on Shabbos. So now, where does he know the halacha? Where does Rabbi Shmuel know the halacha that you have to add on from any time you have a weekday going into Shabbos, or the opposite? We're leaving Shabbos. How does he know that you have to bring the Kodesh in, meaning keep the halachas a few minutes in? So Rabbi Shmuel macharish rishus. I'm sorry. Rabbi Shmuel mosif min chol al kodesh minole. Where does he know that you have to add on from chol into Kodesh, from weekday into Kodesh minole? Nafkle medetanya v'nisem es nafshe seichem. The pasuk says by Yom Kippur, v'nisem es nafshe seichem, you should afflict yourselves betisha on the 9th day. Now, anybody that knows higher mathematics, they know that Yom Kippur is not on the 9th day. The Torah says you should afflict yourself on the 9th day. Yom Kippur falls out on the 10th day. So the Gemara says that you should afflict yourself on the 9th day. So now really it says the 9th day at night. So, but that's a strange thing, because usually the Torah would just say, like we know Shabbos, it says the 7th day and it begins on the night following the 6th day. But it says on the 9th day at night. It's odd. So it says, so you should afflict yourself on the 9th day. Yochel betisha. So you would think that actually I should fast on the 9th day too. As a matter of fact, I interviewed somebody for when I was in college. I had to interview somebody who was an elderly person. There was an elderly, so there was a rabbi who lived near me. Who was very, very he was very elderly. He was actually on the last year. I think maybe last year was live, as a matter of fact. And he had lived through he had lived through the Mir had gone to Shanghai. Mir Yeshiva, which is the biggest yeshiva in the world right now, had gone to Shanghai to escape the Holocaust. And he had said, he was talking about how there was a lot of questions in their travels. There was a lot of questions on the international date line. So they were all writing back. At that point, it was very hot topic because the Jews had scattered all over the world. So questions were being written all over the place about the international date line, what days you're supposed to be keeping, which applies today to like Hawaii, whatever it applies, a number of different places. So the Chazon Ish was one major opinion at the time. Tukachinsky was another. A lot of opinions at the time how to split the international date line. Now, being a New Yorker, I cannot tell you where the date line is. However, I can tell you that if I Google it, I need to know the place, it'll tell me that some of these places have big questions. He told us that in Yom Kippur there was a whole bunch of people that did it. I think he might have said he did it. He just went straight, 2 straight days because he didn't know.
The national date line isn't even straight because they move it around in a couple places.
Yeah. So this is so not. All I know is it's somewhere out of Brooklyn. It's when I'm in Brooklyn, I'm okay. After that, I get lost. I don't know. So in any case, it's not in Manhattan either. So VSM is not just what?
Brooklyn is the international.
Right. The whole world, the new day starts after Brooklyn. So it says, unless you meant dating itself, it's also a big date line too. Yeah. So it says so Tamalom. So it says. So it says Iber Yacham Tisha. So I'm sorry, 1 second. Yacham Tisha. You might think that on the 9th day you should also keep Tisha B'av. Tamalom be'erev, but it says no, the 9th day at night. It says Iber Erev Yacham Tisha. So then you would think, okay, so it starts at night. Great, like every other halacha starts at night. Tamalom be'tisha, but the pasuk says at 9. At 9? Why are you counting the 9th day if it's going to start at night, which we know from the first question in all of Shas? When does the day start? the first question in Maseches Brachas, it deals with, hey, how do you know the day begins at night? And it says Vayiyar Vayiboker. So why are you calling it 9? HaKetzad Maschiel. You're calling it 9 and you're saying don't fast till night, which is really 10. HaKetzad Maschiel Misanim Be'od Yom. And it's telling you that you should start your fast while it's still day, meaning a little bit into day. Milamed Shemosifin Mechol HaKodesh. Then from there we learned that you should add from Chol into Kodesh, add from weekday into Kodesh. Ainli Ela B'Knisaso. That is only when that from there we would only know going in. B'Tziasa Minayin. How do you know going out of the day, meaning from 10 into 11? Just a few minutes into the 11th. Minayin Tamalomar Mi Erev Ad Erev. Ainli Mi Erev Ad Erev. It says from the verse continues and that on Yom Kippur from evening to evening. Ainli Ela Yom from into evening. So it says, what does it tell you? Erev ad Erev, because it's telling you just like you did that Erev to go into the next Erev into a little bit. Ainli El Yom Kippurim. From there we would think, oh, maybe only Yom Kippur you have to add in from weekday into the evening. Tamalomar Shavtem Shabbaschem. It says from all your. The verse continues and it uses the word all your Shabbos. You have to find the verse. The verse says. Shabbos Shabbason Hulachem V'Nisam Es Nafshosechem B'Tisha L'Chodesh Ba'Erev Me'Erev Ad Erev, from evening to evening, Tishbetu Shabbaschem, that you should rest on your Shabbaschem. HaKetzad Kol Makom. So what do we learn from that? Kol Makom Sheish Bo Shabbos Mosifim Mechol HaKodesh. That means that any time that there's something that would be categorized as Shabbos, that you have a Shvisa, that you have a resting day, you should add from Chol, add from the weekday into it. Okay. I'll tell you just one halacha about this because it's such a relevant halacha. The halacha is that we do try to add from Chol onto the Kodesh. That means it's a separate mitzvah. So it's nothing to do. It's not particularly pertaining to Shabbos. It is a mitzvah to add to a separate mitzvah to add from the weekday into it, and it applies to almost every plate. This halacha is actually brought down in Yom Kippur. One of the most famous halachas in the halacha about rebuking individuals is actually mentioned over here. It says that it's specifically referring to women. It says that generally speaking, since the husbands are going since husbands are going off to shul, generally speaking, in the evening, and women often stay home, the women might not realize that they should start Yom Kippur a few minutes before Yom Kippur. So it says maybe you should rebuke them and tell them don't work all the way up to the evening. So the halacha brings down that if you're gonna tell them and they're not going to listen, then just leave it. Don't say anything. You don't start to tell people things if they can't handle it. If they can't, it says mut v'shei shogin value mizidim. Don't make people into doing something on purpose if they're not going to be able to stop themselves. They're going to keep going to the last seconds. They won't be ready. Another halacha, which is another interesting. This is just I can't not say it. It's an incredible response. There is Rav Moshe Feinstein who's widely considered as the biggest halachic authority to ever live in America. His halacha response, we built almost all of halacha, modern halacha, on his responses are taken into account in almost all modern halacha. He passed away in like 1982, 1983, something like that. Lived in the Lower East Side. He has an incredible response that somebody writes him a letter. Apparently, his yeshiva was a block away, and he was 2 blocks away from his house. He was elderly at the time. He was getting at about mincha was about 10 minutes before Shabbos, 15 minutes before Shabbos. He was getting into a car at candle lighting time. When sometimes somebody would pick him up and drive him to the yeshiva for mincha, and somebody wrote a response rebuking him. And it's printed. It's beautiful. It's just like incredible. They said, you know what? You're getting into a car. At candle lighting time. What do you call it? I know it's not Shabbos then, because men don't take Shabbos in with candle lighting. Women do. That's their custom. Men take it in with when they daven or when Shkia comes in, whatever it is. He says, however, other people don't know, and they're going to think that you're driving on Shabbos. Now he's talking about the biggest halachic authority in America. So he says to the person, and he says it's going to cause problems for people. So he says he has this incredible. He calls it what we refer to as marasayin. You're giving people the false impression and about what you're doing. So Rav Moshe writes first. He says, "Thank you so much for jumping to this mitzvah of rebuking. I appreciate it so much. It's such a such an admirable thing to do to let someone know if they think they're doing something wrong. He says, now let me explain a few things to you first. He goes, first of all, you are so wrong. And he writes about, now he doesn't write it, he says, you have to understand the halacha that you are so wrong. That is not marasayin. It's a fascinating halacha in what's called marasayin, when you give a person a false impression. He said, it's just an incredible piece about that. And then he says, the fact that I'm getting in after candlelighting, the halacha is that the minhag is that men, when they add on women add on 18 minutes before Yerushalayim. By the way, that's why the sirens go off at 40 minutes before. They say that's it's when their minhag was to take in Shabbos early and add in Chol and Kodesh. He says men, the halacha has been that they accept it 2 to 3 minutes before, a few minutes before, and that's it. So add 2 to 3 minutes before, 2 to 3 minutes after. That's what they're most of. There are opinions that say more than that. Which says that's been the custom, is 2 to 3 minutes before they stop doing malacha, and then that's it. So he says you're not right for so many different reasons. However, and then his ending is just the humility comes out. He says, however, because you've done such an incredible, I believe that it's such a great thing that you do. We're watching out to make sure that other people shouldn't mistakenly learn, and God forbid somebody should. He says, from now on, I accept myself. I will never ever do it again. I will never get into. You're talking about like 80, 85-year-old man is getting a rush. He says, I will make sure that I will always, it will never happen again. Thank you for, thank you. And it's printed in his shoes. So, and that is the halacha of adding a few minutes before, 2 minutes before. It's also a question if you have to accept it. Say, I verbally accept Shabbos, or you just don't do malacha for 2 minutes before. But in any case, either way. So moving back. So the Gemara says, yeah. Rabbi Akiva, now Rabbi Akiva doesn't need Yom Kippur to learn to add from Chol and Kodesh, because he learned it that you have to add. By the way, that whole concept of adding weekday onto, that's, by the way, that concept, again, just like most of these things are, as in case of anybody hasn't noticed, these patterns repeat itself throughout the entire Torah. If there's a pattern, it's going to be true all over the Torah. You'll see the number of patterns, right? So this way you hear about 6,000 years. The world's supposed to last for 6,000. The 7,000th year is the whatever the next stage of the world. So you have a time of Mashiach that is supposed to be right before the 6,000, the end of the 6,000th year, that is pulling from Chol onto Kodesh, it's pulling from the 6,000 and pulling you into the 7,000. It's a concept all over, and also the whole concept of Mamla V'Malcha is pulling from Shabbos into the Chol. All these concepts, they all follow suit. They all follow one pattern. So the Gemara says over here. So it says, Rabbi Akiva does not learn it from Yom Kippur. Rabbi Akiva, what is he going to do with V'nisem es nafsho sechem b'tisha? My Ovid, like what does he need? What does the pasuk tell us on the 9th day? You should stop. You should keep Yom Kippur on the 9th day. It's not on the 9th day; it's on the 10th day, and he doesn't need it from adding from Chol to Kodesh, because he learns that from Shemitah and Shabbos. So the Tanya, he learns it. Miboy like the Tanya Rav Chia bar Rav Difti. He learns it from this price of Chia bar Difti. The Tani Chia bar Difti bar of Difti v'nisem es nafsho seichem b'tisha, that you should fast on the 9th. V'chi b'tisha masanan. What, we fast on the 9th day? We don't fast on the 9th day. V'lo ba'asir masanan. We fast on the 10th day. Elo lo melacha. Rather, it teaches you, or on the last line on 9a, kol ha'ochel v'shosa b'tisha. B'chi malakas of ki'ilu, turning the page, ki'ilu hisana b'chi va'asiri. Anybody who eats, the pasuk's telling you that you should fast on the 9th, because anybody who eats on the 9th, it's like you fasted on the 9th and the 10th. Great deal.
Is he going to explain where he got that? Is that coming up?
Well, he's saying that the Torah is telling you that you should afflict yourself on the 9th. Yeah. You should afflict yourself. We don't fast.
Translate that into eating.
No, it's you should if you, whatever you're supposed to do. He's learning that whatever you do on the 9th, that's preparing for the 10th, that is part of the affliction. That is part of the mitzvah of affliction.
Big raised eyebrow emoji, Facebook here, but all right.
All right, good. In any case, well, yeah. So,
my reaction is, oh, come on.
Really, why? I mean, it's part of the prep for the mitzvah. So like this, if a person is preparing, if a person is preparing for Shabbos, So part of their keeping Shabbos is preparing for Shabbos. There's no way, as I'll say all over the place, that anybody who is not meichen for Shabbos has nothing to eat on Shabbos, because if so part of your mitzvah of keeping Shabbos is the prep time. Part of your mitzvah of keeping it's true about all of it. Part of your mitzvah, there's a mitzvah according to the Yerushalmi, we don't pass on that. You make a bracha. This is a total different thing. But why on the first day of Sukkot do we reverse the brachas of Leishev Basukah and Shechianu? Because you want your Shechianu to be as close to the beginning of the mitzvah of Sukkah as possible, because of beginning to Sukkah, because there's a mitzvah to build the Sukkah. There's no way to have a Sukkah without building a Sukkah. So you want your Shechianu to be as close as possible to your mitzvah of building the Sukkah. The Yerushalmi paskins that you actually do make a bracha on building the Sukkah. So the fact of the matter is that anytime you have getting into the mitzvah, it's going to be part of the mitzvah itself. So he's saying that biblically, this is now part of the mitzvah. You're eating in order to prepare yourself to be able to get through the next day is going to be a biblical mitzvah of part of your fasting. It's going to be part of your fasting. I don't know if your scale is going to agree, but that's another thing. The pasuk says at the top, Yovelhi. The pasuk says, I'm sorry, the Brisa quotes Yovelhi. Afapi shel shamtu, v'afapi shel tiku. Okay, now the pasuk said we're having a brisa that's going to go through those 4 halachas. Again, the 4 halachas is it's yovel for sure. You're not allowed to work the land, just like on the 7th year. You can't work the land, but ancestral land also goes back. Number 1, slaves go free. Number 2, number 3, we blow the shofar. So the Gemara is going to talk about which are these which are more essential and which are less essential, so to speak, to yovel. So talking about in Yovel here, the verse says Yovel here. Afapi shelo shamtu, afapi shelo tiku. It's going to be Yovel even if you don't blow the shofar, and even if you don't keep away from working the land. Yachal afapi shelo shilchu. You might think, and even if I don't release the slaves, it's still counted as Yovel, so to speak. I still kept the mitzvah of Yovel. Tamalomar he. The verse says no. It only like this is it Yovel. That means that if you release the slaves, will ancestral land go back. But if you don't release the slaves, it's not Yovel and ancestral land goes back. Meaning those two are tied to each other. So those two are causative. Releasing the slaves allows ancestral land to go back. You don't do that, then it doesn't. Different Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yossi Omer Yovel he. Afal pi shelo shamtu, afal pi shelo shelchu. It's even if he learns the opposite. It's what things are tied to each other. It's Yovel, meaning it has to be done in a certain format. The format has nothing to do with not working the land, and it doesn't have to do with releasing the slaves. Yachal afal pi shelo tiku. Maybe you would think even if I don't blow the shofar, it's going to be considered Yovel, meaning that even without blowing the shofar, the ancestral land will come back. Tamalomar he. Nope, we learn from the verse that if you blow the shofar, only if you blow the shofar will ancestral land come back, and not if you don't blow the shofar. So the v'chime achas shebikra echad mikra marbe mikra echad mimayit mipnei ma'ani omer yovel he afal pishal shelcho ve'in yovel elayim kein tiku. So the pasuk says yovel is coming. It says yovel he. Again, this is yovel. It's trying to tell you that certain things have to be done and certain things do not have to be done from the 2 words in the pasuk yovel yi. So how do you know which ones have to be done? Meaning, according to one opinion, it's releasing the slaves that will allow ancestral land to come back. According to the other opinion, it's blowing the shofar that will allow ancestral land to come back. Meaning, which ones are essential? So how do you know that we're now dealing with that first opinion? How do you know that releasing the slaves is tied to ancestral land and not something else? It says, how do you know that? So it says, Lefisha efshar la'olam below shiluch avadim, be efshar la'olam below tikiyah shofar. Because, I'm sorry, this is going on the second opinion. How do you know that releasing the ancestral lands is tied to blowing the shofar and it's not tied to something else? It says because it's very possible that there'll be a time in history where releasing the slaves is not in the hand. There's no slaves to be released, but there's never going to be a time in history that there's not going to be a shofar. That's what Gemara says. I'll tell you another reason why I know that blowing the shofar is crucial to what do you call it? To Yovel. Because zu Masur lebesin, v'zu ein Masur lebesin. It has to be that blowing the shofar is the thing that's crucial, because that's something that Beis Din can do, but Beis Din can't go and pull out slaves out of everybody's property. So it's not something that Beis Din has the ability, they don't have control over. The Gemara says, "My davracha." Why did you give me two reasons? One reason is because there might be a time where there's no slaves. Another reason is because Beis Din doesn't have the ability to control who releases the slaves. It says v'chitem. The reason why I gave you two is v'chitem efshar delika chad b'sof ha'olam dulo mishlach. Because maybe you'll tell me, no, there's going to be throughout history there's going to be at least one slave somewhere in the world. It's not going to be true that there's ever going to be a time where there's not at least one servant that could be released. So you're right. Zu Masur lebesin, v'zu ein Masur lebesin. You're right. I'll tell you then, therefore, that the reason why we know that Yovel is tied to the blowing of the shofar is because Beis Din can accomplish it. Beis Din are able to accomplish blowing the shofar by themselves. They don't need anyone else they don't need to depend on anyone else. So they can declare it as Yovel, which is not the true by releasing the slaves. They don't have the ability. So this is Bishlam or Rabbi Yossi. So we understand why Rabbi Yossi ties the halachas of Yovel to the shofar and not to the releasing the slaves. Kedamar, Taima, he said his reason. El Rabbi Yehuda, my Taima, why does Rabbi Yehuda tie the halachas of Yovel to releasing the slaves, not like Rabbi Yossi. He indeed does tie it to releasing the slaves, and not tie it to the shofar. The exact opposite. So it says, because the pasuk says, "Amakra krasim draba arts," because the pasuk says that you should declare freedom in the land. Kasava mikra nidrash lefanav v'lo lefnei fanav. Because and he holds, it says Yovel he. You should declare freedom in the land. Yovel he, and the verse is going back on declare freedom in the land. That is what makes Yovel. And the pasuk goes back to those words. So now the Gemara asks, "Tekuli ama dror lashon cheros." How did you know? But according to everybody, dror means that you should declare freedom in the land. That dror means let them go, let the slaves go. My masha, how do you know that? The tanya ain't dror el lashon cheros, because the verse says that because we have a brayso that teaches us that dror means cheros. It means freedom. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, my lashon dror k'midayer bei daira umuval schora b'chol medina. It comes from to dwell. That a person he has the ability to go dwell where he wants to dwell. So that is what dror means. It means to be free. Amar Rabbi Ava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Zudi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Ava Chachamim Omrim. But you should know the Chachamim have a totally different opinion. Meaning, one says the ancestral land comes back with if you keep the bits of shofar. The other one says the ancestral land comes back, has nothing to do with shofar, it has to do with release of slaves. But the Chachamim hold Shlosh and Makvos, you need all three. But Kasavri Mikra Nidrash Lefanav Lefanav that the verse, when it says this is Yovel, it's taking everything around it that the verse said. What's before it, what's after it. This was what has to happen for Yovel. Yovel Hahid but the verse says Yovel he. It says Yovel. I'm sorry, read this is Yovel. What is it coming to say is not Yovel? What is it coming to include? I'm sorry. What is it coming to include? But it says this is Yovel. It's coming to include that other things are also Yovel. It says how da'afilu b'chutz la'aretz. Even in chutz la'aretz says Yovel. Vaksiv ba'aretz. But the verse says only in Eretz Yisrael. How bizman shenoig dror ba'aretz noig b'chutz la'aretz. V'zashen noig ba'aretz in noig b'chutz la'aretz. It's coming to tell you. The verse is coming to tell you that when Yovel is accomplished in Eretz Yisrael, you also have to keep Yovel in chutz la'aretz outside of Eretz Yisrael. But when there's no Yovel in Eretz Yisrael, there's no Yovel in chutz la'aretz. So since there's no Yovel now in Eretz Yisrael, we don't have Yovel in chutz la'aretz. And the reason why there's no Yovel in Eretz Yisrael has to do with all the Shvatim and all of Klal Yisrael, or most of Klal Yisrael being back in Eretz Yisrael, which we don't have today. So there's no Yovel in Eretz Yisrael, there's no Yovel in Chutz. We'll stop here.